Hey there, crafters! Welcome to Vinyl Diva Crafts. My name is Nikki, and this is my first YouTube video. So first and foremost, thanks so much for stopping by and showing this video a little bit of love. Secondly, I guess some introductions are in order. As I said, my name is Nikki, and I am a part-time crafter. It's not my full-time job. My full-time job is actually behind a desk, working in Excel spreadsheets and crunching numbers most of the day. So the creative part of my brain, which, let's face it, is the majority of my brain, tends to get kind of restless throughout the day, and I really rely heavily on crafting and the arts to kind of decompress and basically nurture my overall mental health. Which brings me to why I'm starting this channel in the first place. I figured I couldn't be the only one who was juggling work stress, life stress, and the stress of this past year. We all had to do a lot of adjusting and adapting to new situations. So I wanted to create a space where we could all kind of collaborate, decompress together, and create some really cool things that hopefully make us all smile, because at the end of the day, that's my only goal. I really want this space to be a creative platform where I can show you guys some of my favorite crafts and how to do them, as well as maybe trying some new things that I've never done before on camera for you, so that we can kind of learn together. So today's craft is actually something that I've done a couple times before, and they're these really cool little floral pendants. They've kind of been the spring-summer trend that's been popping up when I do all my online shopping and all of my local boutiques. They're pretty popular right now, and they're actually pretty easy to make. They do require some additional supplies, so I will provide you all with basically like a checklist. So I'm going to flip this around and give you a view of the crafting table so that you can see how these are made and maybe follow along with me. I'll catch you on the flip side. Here's a list of supplies you'll need to get started. A bottle of clear UV resin, a small UV torch. I use this for flash curing my pieces in between pouring, just to keep the resin from leaking out under the bezels. You'll also need a large UV lamp for the longer curing of the pieces that we'll be working on today. Some packing tape. I use this to seal off the back of the bezels to create a little bit of a barrier. You'll want to pick some open back bezels of your choosing. These I got from Joann Fabrics. You'll need some chain link to make your necklaces. I've got silver and some gold that I'll be using today. Jump rings to attach the clasps and the pendant to your chain. Some small pliers. I like these because they're curved. I can pick things up off of the table and open and close my jump rings with those. Some dried flowers. I dried these myself between the pages of a book for a few days, and they were good to use. A small lighter just to pop any bubbles in the resin. A toothpick for spreading the resin around. And your hardware. You'll want clasps and that sort of thing to create your final necklace. Okay, so I flipped you guys around. Welcome to the aerial view of my craft table. I like to lay everything out ahead of time just to kind of see which flowers look best in each of the bezels that I've chosen. So I laid everything out here, and I'm going ahead and cutting some clear packing tape. I use this primarily to seal off the back end of the bezel, just to keep any of the UV resin from leaking underneath. When you don't seal it off, the UV resin will leak under the back and create kind of a mess. So I always like to just gently press these onto some packing tape to keep the leaking to a minimum. And I keep the little UV torch nearby as well, because with the initial pour of that first layer of resin, sometimes it's beneficial to just cure the resin for about 15 to 30 seconds. That will really keep the resin from moving around any further. And I'm just cutting the last little bit of packing tape for the final bezel. This one did have the jump ring included, so I just want to make sure that the seal on the back is as tight as possible. You can remove the jump ring too if you find that easier, but this looks like it's pretty well sealed. And now we can get started with the first pour of resin. And unfortunately the camera did cut out for a minute, but all I did was cut the packaging tape to separate the bezels. It occurred to me that it might be easier to just move one at a time instead of trying to move 3 all at once. So I separated them and unfortunately got a layer into 2 of them before I realized that the camera cut out. So we'll just pick up here with these last 2. And I'm pouring a small layer into the bezel. This first pour should be pretty thin. Because you're sandwiching a flower in between layers of resin, the first pour is really just to seal off the back and create a flat surface for your flower to sit on. And I'm just using a toothpick here to spread the resin up against the edges of the bezel and popping any bubbles that I see with my lighter. You definitely want to take care of any imperfections before this cures in the light, because once it's cured, you really can't fix it. And this will go in for about 3 minutes. So while that one's curing in the lamp, I will pour some resin into this teardrop shaped one. Again, use that toothpick to spread everything out evenly, making sure to get up against the edges and the little peak of this teardrop, because that's definitely a spot where the resin could form a gap. And I'll pop the bubbles again. And then this one can join its friend for a little sun bath. So these last 2 are the ones that I had already poured a layer into. So they're both ready for the flower. And I'm just placing the flowers in exactly how I want them to be once that top layer of resin goes in. And you definitely want to make sure that any petals or stems are laying flat, because you don't want anything to stick out of this second layer of resin. So I'm pouring super slow to make sure that every part of the flower is completely covered with the resin. And the slower you pour, the fewer air bubbles you'll get too. So the more you can control the resin as it comes out of the bottle, the better. Popping those bubbles again. And with these flowers, because there's so many petals, it can create air pockets, so definitely make sure you go over with that lighter to pop bubbles. And then I'm just flash curing here with the UV torch for about 15 to 30 seconds. This is to make sure that that layer kind of firms up while I'm working on the daisy pendant. I just don't want anything to fall into it or cause any imperfections in that layer that I just poured. So again, nice, slow, controlled pour from the bottle, making sure that all of the petals and the center of the flower are covered. And you can go through with the toothpick and use that to press any of the petals in as well. Just making sure that it's nice and flat. And the other 2 are now done in the lamp, so we can pull those out and pop these other ones in for their cure. And that oval one does have a little bit of a gap, but it's towards the top, so I'm not too concerned. With the second pour, I'll be able to fill that in, and it shouldn't have any effect on the, like how the flower sits in there. So I'm just going to pop these two other guys in, get them curing, and then add our flowers to these other two bezels. I'm taking this little purple flower with the greenery and placing it into the oval pendant. I kind of like the greenery on this because I think it makes the purple flower pop and just adds a little bit of interest to the pendant. So definitely feel free to play around with leaves, little bits of grass, anything that can add dimension and interest to your piece. And then the pansy will go in this little teardrop shaped pendant. The pansy actually came from an arrangement of live flowers that I have on my porch. I just love them because they were so little and seemed like the perfect size to fit into these bezels. So I actually dried a bunch of them and plan on making some other fun things. I think like a pair of earrings would be really cool with the pansies. You can just kind of let your imagination run wild. I don't know. And with this second layer, because these bezels are slightly bigger than the other two, I want to make sure that I'm creating a nice smooth top coat. Oftentimes I'll even do a third coat of resin just to kind of dome the top of the piece. I think it looks a little bit more finished. But again, just making sure that all of the bubbles in the resin are popped so that we can cure these guys for a second time. And I'm just taking a look in the lamp to see if the other two are coming along nicely, which they are. And as soon as the light goes out, I will pop these last two guys in to cure them again. So I hope you enjoyed that musical interlude. These are done curing in the lamp, and I'm just removing the packaging tape from the backs of the bezels. I think these turned out really nice though. Now the glue does leave a little bit of a residue, so you may want to wash these with a little bit of mild soap and water, or you can rub them down with a little bit of rubbing alcohol just to remove that glue left behind. But I do go in with a final thin layer of resin on the back just to ensure that any marks left by the tape have been smoothed out. And it just creates a nice glossy back to match that glossy front that you've created. So I'm going to go ahead and add that final layer of resin to these, get them cured, and then we can go ahead and assemble the final necklaces. I hope that you guys were able to create some pendants along with me. I'm really happy with how mine turned out. I actually really am like obsessed with the pansy. I think it is so pretty and so delicate. It's kind of nice that you can actually, you know, press your own flowers. You know, maybe a flower that came from a bouquet from someone you love. They're just really cool little keepsakes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I hope to see you all back here soon. Thanks so much. Bye.